All right, Nick, let's talk about the Seattle Seahawks. Training camp is upon us. We're about to see who is good, who is not, who is starting to stand out for this Seahawks team. And luckily for the Seahawks, there's one player in particular already starting to look very promising. I think this is a great update for Seahawks fans. Before we dive into all that, though, I'm Andrew, that's Nick, and this is Saturday Morning Inspection. All right, Nick, as I alluded to, one player in particular for the Seahawks is starting to look very, very promising. Let's get into the article, then we'll dive into the details, statistics on the other side. This first part is over from SI.com. It says, Ricky White, the former UNLV star, worked with the backup units on offense and will compete for a roster spot on the back end of the wide receiver rotation. The Seahawks are enamored of White's all-around special teams ability, and we'll get a better look at that once the pads go on during camp. None of the undrafted free agents appeared to work consistently with either of the first or second teams in the spring. With the veteran defense returning, the most of the players from a year ago earning roster spots won't be easy. It's rare that a player is so good on special teams coming out of college that it can earn them a roster spot, but that is the case here. It's because he's not just good at one thing, he's good at everything. Whether you need a punt block, a gunner, or a returner, he can do it all. It's hard to see the Seahawks letting that go. And just in case you're wondering exactly how good at special teams Ricky White is, let's pull up this next tweet from over on Mountain West Twitter. And it says, UNLV's Ricky White III is the Mountain West Special Teams Player of the Year. This was last year. The standout receiver has used his offensive skill set as an advantage. White has blocked a total of 4 punts, which is crazy, the most in all of college football. Carol Drew shares that as one of the team's captains, his leadership and work ethic have been contagious to UNLV football, which you love that as well. A guy that can be a captain, step up, be a good figure in the locker room. That is a plus as well. So this guy is a special teams ace at every single facet of the game. But when you look at him as a receiver, he's not too shabby of a receiver as well. And that's why I think he's a shoo-in to make this roster. Let's look at our graph here showing Ricky White versus other 7th round receivers, the guys drafted directly around him. And you look here, let's look at production first, touchdowns. What does Ricky White look versus these other guys? And we're talking about last season, 11 touchdowns for White. When you look at him, Kanata Mumpfield, another guy, I think he's very impressive in a couple areas, but still 5 touchdowns for him. In green, you see Caden Prather, 4 touchdowns for him. And then finally at the light blue spot, Dominic Lovett, 6 touchdowns for him. Then let's look at yards per reception for White, 13.2 yards per catch. I think that's very great. Again, Kenan Mumpfield, this is where he shines a little bit, 15.6 yards per catch for him. Caden Prather, 11.1. Dominic Lovett, 10.2. Then finally, you look at their overall receiving grade per PFF, and this is where there's a far and away difference between Ricky White and the others. An 82 overall PFF grade for White last season, 66.9 for Mumpfield, 62.2 for Prather, and for Lovett, a 67.2. So almost 20-point jump here for Ricky White over the others. So very good at yards per reception. Not quite as good as Kenan Mumpfield, but still very, very talented in his own right. Receiving grade, very high for Ricky White, 20 points higher than everyone else. And then you look at touchdowns, 11 for him. He's almost double any other player on this list. The very productive player Ricky White is. A lot of great stuff for him. Yards per catch, great. Receiving grade, great. Overall, not too bad of a receiver. Pair that with elite special teams play, I think this guy is going to be a shoo-in to make the Seahawks roster this year. Curious what your thoughts are on this one, Nick. But before we get to you, Seahawks fans, in the comment section below, we're talking special teams. We're talking players that are special teams aces. Let us know, who's your favorite special teams player in Seahawks history? Could be a kicker, could be punter. There's a couple good ones of those that I can remember. I remember the double punt. Then you could have a special teams ace as well that you really, really like. But nonetheless, let us know your thoughts on your favorite special teams player in Seahawks history in the comment section below. While you're down there, look at the description below the video to check out our weekly newsletter from the Substack platform. Very, very great. I think you're going to love it. It's got all the extra football content to tide you over to the regular season and past that as well. good articles, things that we like, people that we love to follow. And hey, if you make a great comment, you'll see yourself there because we highlight our favorite comment of the week as well. It's free to you, absolutely no charge, just extra football content directly to your inbox. So go ahead, subscribe to that as well. It really helps us out. But nonetheless, enough from me, Nick. What are your thoughts on everything here for Seattle?
So I think Ricky White as a prospect, let's start with him as a wide receiver, right? In college, he lined up traditionally on the outside kind of role. He wasn't really a slot merchant, but he was still incredibly productive. He had 220 plus catches, over 3,000 receiving yards, 24 touchdowns in his 4-year collegiate career, back-to-back 1,000-yard receiving season. So he was a guy that was a star receiver for UNLV the past 2 seasons of his collegiate career. He was an absolute stud. At the same time, he was a special teams ace. That tells me he's a team guy. He's a guy that's not going to, put himself and his ego in front of what's good for the team. Listen, he's going to go out there and catch 8 balls for $130 in college and then block a punt the next play. I love to see that. I love good culture guys. I love versatile guys, right? It's good for every team, whether it's the Seahawks or any other franchise, having a guy that's can be productive at a skill position, offense or defense, but is also willing to put his hand in the dirt and come off the edge and try and block a punt, block a kick. Love to see that. So great culture fit. Really love a humble team first guy here in Ricky White. And when you talk about special teams performance, and we mentioned this about a week ago, we were talking about another potential special teams guy the Seahawks have added to the fold in Connor O'Toole. We've got to remember Mike McDonald made his bones, or at least got very famous as a defensive coordinator for the Baltimore Ravens under John Harbaugh, who of course made his bones. He got famous as a special teams coordinator with the Philadelphia Eagles under Andy Reid. So Mike McDonald, I guarantee it was beat into his head, along with all the other Ravens assistants, that special teams matters. Mike McDonald taking that same approach as Seattle, understanding we got to have special teams guys all across the field at all times, and Ricky White can certainly be that kind of player. It also is important to understand when we're dealing with late round selections and undrafted free agents, although White here was a 7th rounder, they have to use special teams to get on the roster 9 out of 10 times before they grow and become a more complete every down player, situational player on offense or defense, those scrimmage downs. So just because he starts off as only a special teams guy, which will probably be how he makes the roster, doesn't mean he can or won't grow into a legitimate receiving threat, which I think he's got a strong chance of doing, which leads me to my second point. If you look at the Seahawks wide receivers, it's all highly structured around JSN. They did add Marquez Valdez-Scantling and of course Cooper Kupp, but the reality is both those guys are the other side of 30. They're not going to be here 2-3 years from now, most likely. So there's going to have to be, or there will be, a need for other Seahawks receivers around JSN in the future. That's an opportunity for Ricky White. Again, we're talking in the future here to come out and emerge as a complementary piece to Jackson Smith and Jigba. So we've got kind of a two-pronged approach here. We've got a special teams ace, day one for Seattle, making their special teams unit that much better. A guy who has had high production as a receiver in college, so he can grow and develop to become a complementary piece of JSN. And let's also not forget, if injuries occur, whether it's with Kupp or Marquez Valdez-Scantling, I think MVS is most likely the kind of guy that Ricky White will slide behind on the depth chart early in his career. If injuries do occur, White does have the production and the experience at the collegiate ranks to step up and be at least a capable wide receiver. So this is an all-around great fit here for the Seattle Seahawks. Addresses a lot of issues, because one of the things we talk about with Seattle, we've talked about it a lot over the course of the offseason, is that their young core that they acquired as part of the Russell Wilson bonanza of picks that they got, they're going to have to start, and they already have in some ways, extending and signing those guys long term, which means they have a lot of capital that's already put to the side playing for those players. So you're going to need cheaper, younger players starting right now, the 2025 class, to kind of supplement the roster as they really spend a lot of money on that young stud core. You look at a guy like Ricky White who can do just that. Again, 7th round selection. He's going to be cheap for the next 4 years. So special teams ace, situational receiver, maybe develops into a good complementary wideout. That's perfect, because it's going to be pennies on the dollar productions against costs. So again, you talk about everything you want here for Seattle Seahawks. Great special teams guy right out the get-go, makes your team that much better. High potential, a lot of production in college. Love to see that. Humble guy, team first guy, perfect culture fit, and he's also extremely cheap, which fits the team's overall long-term strategy. Whatever box you want to see from Ricky White as a Seattle Seahawks fan, I guarantee you he checks it. This was one of the more under-the-radar moves Seattle made this entire offseason, and I tell you what, they made a lot of big moves. So, of course, they had the top ones dominated the headlines, but I think if you look at just a guy who fits what Mike McDonald wants, what John Schneider wants in terms of their short, medium, and long-term strategy, look no further than Ricky White.
Yeah, Nick, and you talk about production, a guy, the future, looking at getting ready, and even if he has to slide in this year at any point. When you look at Ricky White, he had a great year last year, 78 catches, 1,032 yards, 13.2 yards per catch, 11 touchdowns. That's really good. But even better year the year before. So we're talking about consistent production out of the guy, where he had 88 catches, 1,400, almost 1,500 yards, 16.9 yards per catch, and then 8 touchdowns. And then he also had 51 catches the year before that. So this is a guy who's got a lot of volume. He's had the ball in his hands. He's gotten consistent production. This isn't just some fly-by-night receiver who had one good year, and that's why he's getting drafted in the 7th round. There's a guy coming from a smaller school. He's not huge, but he's not small by any means, 6'1", 190. So he's big enough to be a receiver in the NFL. But this is a guy, consistent production, looking really good. A lot of great stuff on the horizon for White here. I think this is going to be a productive player. I think he's going to be a great asset on special teams, and I think that is why he makes this roster. He's valuable enough on special teams to wait, let him develop, and use him in the wide receiver core whenever he is ready and whenever the Seahawks are ready, because like you said, they've got good guys for now, but they're going to need some more people for the future here very soon.